will turn it over to Nikki to introduce this session and our speakers.
Great, thank you, Chelsea. We're really excited to hear from the other risk regions to see what they've been up to. Our first speaker today is Tony Lynn Morelli from the Northeast RISC. So Tony Lynn, you can go ahead and start sharing your screen.
Super, thanks, Nikki. Really glad to be here. This has been really exciting. So I'm Tony Lynn Morelli. I'm a research ecologist with USGS and one of the co-founders of the RISC network. We started out in the Northeast, and now we're so happy that the North Central is endeavoring and that Chelsea's at the lead. We've all been working very closely together. Thanks to Nikki helping facilitate us over the last 9 months, and another intern, Melanie, the year before that. So we've been working very closely. I'll just tell you a little bit about what we're doing at the Northeast. I'll start out with this little slide, even though probably by now we've seen it and heard it and you know it, but in case you need a reminder of how climate change is going to be impacting invasive species management and invasions in general, you can think about different places where we'll have these problems exacerbated. So we have more climate extremes or extreme weather events kind of creating more opportunities for invasion, species shifting their ranges, as we've been hearing about. Dana was just talking about the seasons changing, and so we have longer growing seasons that can cause problems. New pathways, more relevant on the coasts, I guess, but will be relevant across the country. And then, unfortunately, we are also finding that invasives are both becoming more competitive, some invasives, and also that herbicides are becoming less effective, things that Dr. Bethany Bradley mentioned yesterday. So with those concerns front of mind, we developed the Northeast RISC network with our mission statement to reduce the compounding effects of invasive species and climate change by synthesizing relevant science, sharing the needs and knowledge of managers, building stronger scientist manager communities, and conducting priority research. And we now have almost 700 people in our network, something that I'm sure you'll all in the North Central get to very quickly, because it's just an area that, as you know, you all know sitting here, it's something that people are really concerned about, this interface, and want to learn more about. So we meet regularly, weekly as a group. There's about 15 of us. You can see people here, and we talk about how to communicate the science that's happening, how to synthesize the research that's happening, how to elicit information from our manager partners, either that are at the table or that aren't, and how to put on symposia like the one that's happening right now and other activities. We actually put all of the information that we had learned and the things that we feel like we had done well into a guiding principles document that's available. All this information is available at our website. And so there's all kinds of information about sort of what we do: boundary spanning, original research, research translation and synthesis, and communication and implementation. There's a little timeline about when we did things. And then we work a lot on kind of digesting information and trying to share back what we've done in a way that is kind of user-friendly. And so, for example, we put together an annual report highlighting things that we accomplished last year. And that was sort of thinking about both journal articles and also other digests for out communication. So we have these things we call management challenges that North Central is working on as well. And I can highlight one or two of those here. We've also held and published on a survey that told us about what our managers are really interested in. And you can see here that in order, sort of the things that are most of interest are thinking about resilient native communities, range shifting, biocontrol, changes in growing seasons, all things you've heard about in the last couple of days, and things that we've written about as well. So we have these, what we call management challenges. These are one-pagers that we digest like 10 to 50 journal articles into, and then make them very accessible for people to read about the information. Our latest is this one on resilience called Embracing the Future that's already had, I think, 750 downloads in the last 4 months since it's been out. So that might be of interest from the sort of RRT or RAD approach. We also have one on forest pest risk. Our most popular one is thinking about planting native plants, and we've already had it downloaded about 3,500 times since it came out right before COVID, or right in COVID. Of course, we're all here because we're building together this, well, I'm most excited about being here to build this national network. So helping the North Central, as well as the Pacific Islands and the Northwest and the Southeast, which you'll be hearing from. We're all working together to share our lessons and experiences and our needs and our priorities. And in recognition of that, the RISC network was awarded the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies prestigious Climate Adaptation Leadership Award for Natural Resources this year, which is really exciting. There's not many climate adaptation awards, and so we're really happy to receive it. So all that information can be found at our website, which is joining forces, at least the landing page will be joining forces with the North Central RISC very soon. We're in the works on it. And I will hand it off to the next presenter.
Great, thank you, Tony Lynn. Next, we have Paul Hymowitz from the Northwest RISC, and I believe we will be sharing your screens.
Yes, thanks. And I appreciate just all the great information that's been shared in this workshop and the chance for us to give a quick report. And it's very appropriate to be coming after Tony Lynn because Northeast RISC was very much an inspiration for starting up the Northwest RISC and kind of the ongoing coordination that we have with the growing RISC network is really exciting. I'm Paul Hymowitz. I work for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Pacific region, which covers Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and the Hawaii and the Pacific Islands. I'm based in Portland, and one of the steering team members for Northwest RISC, along with the Northwest Climate Adaptation Science Center, and then EcoAdapt, who is currently helping coordinate Northwest RISC. Catherine Braddock was hoping to join today and couldn't, so I'll get the chance to chat with you all. The next slide will show you our geography, and we are very much the neighbors to the west of North Central RISC, and lots of overlap in some of the information that was shared today. So we cover Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and also we've been developing some great connections with Canada and British Columbia in particular, but certainly trying to not just look at that geographic boundary too tightly, and there's a lot of opportunity to coordinate with neighboring states and provinces. I just want to mention a few highlights from last year in particular, and maybe even going back a little bit to 2020. We're still pretty new, and that's when we started. So I'll just briefly talk about these three things, and the next slide will give you just a snippet of information about our kind of first big endeavor, which was to figure out what the needs were as we were getting Northwest RISC off the ground. Again, borrowing from some similar surveys that had been done in the Pacific Islands and the Northeast, we wanted to hear from the varied potential audiences that would be interested in Northwest RISC. And we heard back from over 300 regional practitioners, a lot of folks who are working in the trenches with invasive species management and climate change adaptation, and asked about the degree which they're considering this nexus, some of the emerging practices and policies that address these dual goals of addressing climate vulnerabilities and invasive species management, and then what kind of needs and opportunities and limitations Northwest RISC could potentially serve. And this was done in 2020, late 2020, and the report came out in June 2021. And I'll put our website will show up in one of the later slides, and this is one of the things that you can look at there. I'll talk in a minute just about a little bit of what we heard from that. But we'll go to the next slide, please, and I'll just mention kind of our biggest perhaps highlight of this past year, which was holding our first symposium virtually last fall. And we had a much bigger level of interest than we first expected, which was fabulous. We had over 300 managers and scientists and other practitioners join us online for those 2 days. What was particularly exciting was that we ended up using the Resist Accept Direct framework, which has been talked about a lot in the last couple of days in this workshop, as a kind of framing principle for our agenda. And it really was the first time I think a lot of us associated with Northwest RISC started to think about how we can tie a lot of what we might do and the needs we heard about to that framework. So to mention the results, the recordings from that symposium are another thing you can get to on our website. The videos are all on a YouTube page, and there's some symposium summaries and other materials there as well. And then the next slide just shares a little bit, kind of tying even to some of the information Tony Lynn shared in findings from Northeast RISC. And I think you'll see a lot of overlap here. The priorities that we had heard both through the survey and then also through the symposium from managers about what aspects of this nexus they particularly want to spend more time on or get more information on. And you probably recognize a lot of similar themes that came up for us, especially out of the survey: Native community resilience and how to best manage those Native communities relative to climate and invasive species impacts were very high. So just some of those talks in the last session, very relevant there. Not as much interest for us yet on things like kind of sleeper species and impacts on biocontrol, but overall, giving us a lot of fodder to start to dig into. And we're just now kind of emerging after the first part of 2022 focused on kind of renewing our advisory group, which I'll show in the last slide, kind of recalibrating from this startup phase into a really digging in phase. We're going to be putting out our first webinar, and so the next slide is just a little flyer for that. And so Emily, who I think may be still on, this workshop participant group is going to be joined by Irene Weber with the Washington Department of Natural Resources to look at invasive plants in a changing climate and looking at some of the both kind of regulatory and risk assessment and management that we might take. So that'll be in just about a month, and certainly open to everyone. The information to participate in that, I think, is not quite on our website, just kind of a save the date, but that information will be coming out soon in terms of a Zoom link and so on. And finally, we definitely are a great team effort. This is a list of all of the organizations currently participating on our advisory team. And again, Fish and Wildlife Service and USGS are providing the primary funding right now. And so we have a smaller core group that also includes EcoAdapt and ESA to help us work on kind of more of the logistical sides of things. And so the last slide just lists again our website and some contact information. Catherine Braddock is the one who monitors that email address, so you can reach her, or certainly feel free to reach out to me or the other lead folks. And we really look forward to working more with the North Central as part of this overall broad risk collaboration that continues to grow.
Great, thank you so much, Paul. Our next speaker is Chelsea Arnott from the Pacific Islands region. So take it away, Chelsea.
Yeah, thanks so much, Nikki, and aloha, everybody. Thank you for having me. I'm here representing the Pacific RISC. So again, I'm Chelsea Arnott. I'm with the Hawaii Invasive Species Council, and I'm one of the core members of our Pacific RISC team. I haven't figured out how to take a Zoom photo of all of our core team members with everybody smiling. So right here, we have our logos of the organizations that are represented on our core team. We started off with a smaller group. It was really Hawaii based. A few of those folks were Pacific regional scientists. And within the last year and a half, we've really reached out, and now we have Pacific partners from Palau, Guam, CNMI, and Micronesia, which is really great. And our group is relatively new, like Paul was saying. We've been talking for a few years as a smaller core team, and right now we're just starting to get the momentum and really moving forward on a lot of the actions that I'll be sharing with you here today. Next slide, please. So yeah, just echoing Paul, the Northeast RISC has really been the inspiration and really helped guide our structure and framework for our own RISC. A lot of the things that Paul and Tony Lin talked about are also things that we're doing here in the Pacific Islands, prioritizing lines of research. Again, we also did a survey. I think this is a really great first step to understanding what the needs are, what the challenges are with this nexus between invasive species and climate change. And from that, developing management strategies and actions to combine threats while strengthening those existing successful approaches. And also creating a space for engagement and communications of lessons learned. So we have a listserv. We're also looking at starting a scientific advisory group under our core team, facilitating a network of resource managers, researchers, and interested community members and organizations, and promoting relevant research and develop effective information sharing strategies. Next slide, please. So these are our near-term actions that will help us achieve those objectives I mentioned earlier. One of the big ones was hiring a 2-year program specialist. Actually, this person's gonna start any day now, which is really exciting. We were able to get funding from US Fish and Wildlife to support this position. I think like a lot of the risks, our core team membership is made up with people that already have full-time jobs. So a lot of the work of doing, literature reviews and consolidating all that information and putting it out there for folks to understand what that nexus is. I mean, it's a lot of work. So we're really appreciative. We have the funding and can hire somebody that can dedicate, their full time to moving this along. So consolidating existing information. So a lot of these actions are going to fall under this the new position we have. So doing, the literature review and putting it all into a centralized, accessible location, kind of what Tony Lin showed with the Northeast RISC. That's what we're looking at for our own website. So what information is out there, and let's make it accessible to folks and easy for them to understand that information. We have started a webinar series. We've had 3 webinars. Some of the topics that have been brought up in the research that's happening in North Central RISC or North Central region are also different topics we're investigating here. So like how invasive species promote wildfire here, which you don't think Hawaii has a lot of wildfire, but just like the rest of the nation, we're experiencing more frequent severe wildfires here in Hawaii. Creating the needed organizational framework to facilitate those discussions and set priorities. I talked about, we have our core team that really sets these objectives and next steps, but we want to develop that science advisory board that will help move that action forward. And then strategically planning the next steps, identifying and prioritizing those needs and gaps and determining where the most value can be added. Again, that survey that we conducted will really help inform that and collaboratively develop research agendas for the Pacific Islands region. I mean, we're very different from the rest of the mainland US. We have different native biotas, we have divergent climate projections, and a range of invasive species threats. And so we really want to focus, what are those impacts going to be to the Pacific Island regions? And producing research summaries for managers to use in developing adaptive management programs. So that's what I wanted to present here today. I'll pass it over to the next speaker. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Chelsea. Our last speaker of the day is Dia Laurence from the Southeast RISC, so take it away, Dia.
Okay, let me get it going here. All right, are you seeing the correct slide? Okay, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to speak. We are the newest RISC network, so this is really a lot of what we're going to do. We did just secure our funding, our seed funding, to start actually forming our network. And so I'm doing this with Brett Sheffers, also at the University of Florida, and Wes Daniel from USGS. And so one of the things, I'm going to do a little bit of an overview of the Southwest, like very brief. But one of the things that's really interesting about our area is that, you know, we have all these diverse ecosystems. It's Appalachian Mountains to all these coastlines as you go along the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic coast. So we're already experiencing a lot of the really prevalent, you know, predicted things that were going to happen with climate change. Since 1970, we've had about a 2-degree increase in temperature, and that's projected to be 4 to 8 degrees by the end of the century. And we also have more days. This is a graph just showing a projected difference from the historical climate. So these are number of days over 95 degrees. This also means that we're going to have less frost days. So a lot of the species that are being held in check here are going to be released as the climate warms. And so we're dealing with things like sea level rise. This is in Miami. The water going up over A1A. Fire, the fire frequency and intensity is increasing. Extreme weather events, you can see 3 hurricanes stacked up here. Those are more frequent and intense. We also have a lot of tornadoes now. And then as everybody else is dealing with this urbanization, reducing biodiversity. We also have a really intense, trade and travel in the area. There's over 30 ports of entry in Florida alone. You also have, New Orleans on up the coast with these ports. So we have a lot of species coming in. So there's a lot of potential intentional or accidental introductions. We've got pet trades, very heavy pet trade in the region, a lot of unintentional introductions, and then unintentional and intentional escapes from, gardening and nursery growing. So the Southeast region is important because a lot of invasive species have this subtropical or tropical origins. And a lot of these invasions within sort of our region are being held in check by those frost limits. And when that climate changes, the Southeast region is going to become a possible seed source of invasion for the other risk regions. Just to highlight a few pieces of research that we think might translate very well to the whole network. We recently completed a horizon scan, Florida specific, where we identified potential invaders and their pathways for arrival. This method could really easily be amended or just change a little bit to do another horizon scan for the region under the lens of climate change. We also have some research at the university where they're looking at future vertebrate invasions under different climate change scenarios for species and pet trade. And this highlights, the Southeast RISC as a major epicenter for continued invasion risk. And then the USGS has this program where they have their FAST maps, where basically they're predicting how species might move around with storm surges and other flooding events. So we're already doing some of this kind of work. And I think this is going to work really nicely with our network. So the goals that we have is basically we're copying a lot of what y'all have already done. So we're going to start, we've just started communicating and pulling in stakeholders, partners. We're currently organizing our RISC, the first workshop. We want to build our website and produce educational materials, host workshops, sponsor original research as funding comes in, and propose and moderate organized sessions at regional and national meetings. But most importantly, we want to integrate with the rest of the RISC networks. And so the activities that we have coming up, we're starting to build our survey for the stakeholders, again, using the other RISC networks as models. And we hope to launch that in May. We're working on our general recruitment via conferences, listservs, and social media. I just spoke with Chuck Bargeron. I think he's going to help us get a listserv set up this week. Next week. Our first workshop is scheduled for summer of 2022. We're starting to put that all together. I'm organizing a Southeast RISCC Symposium on climate change. We're actually have a meeting tomorrow on building that. And then the cross-risk workshop at NASMA to bring everybody together. And then possibly we're looking into organizing a workshop for the Species on the Move conference in Florida. And that will be May of 2023. So that is what I have. And I realize I didn't turn my camera on. Here I am. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dia, Chelsea, Paul, and Tony Lynn. And we've got a few minutes left for any questions from the audience for any of the risks. So feel free to raise your hand or put any questions in the chat.
Oh, we're stalling for time, and just to say it's just really awesome. Like, it's so fun. No, thanks for Chelsea for giving us an opportunity to talk about all this, and it's really neat to see this all coming together and to see you all hiring people. That's super exciting. We have done everything on a shoestring in the Northeast, so that's really great to see that people believe in the system and want to support it. Also, it's nice to see your face, yeah.
If nobody else has a question, I guess I do. If you guys could say like just one thing that you're the most excited about for the next like 2 to 5 years of the RISC network, what would it be?
I'm just going to say that we'll be very excited. I think in 2 to 5 years, we're going to have a really nice network put together down here. I don't know what the other folks did when they started building their networks, but I'm an extension professional, so extension faculty at UF. So I'm really tapping into my contacts throughout the region that are extension specific, because I found that they are the ones that are the most tapped in, the extension specialists that handle invasive species. So we know everybody. I know everybody in Florida, but I don't know everybody in North Carolina. So I'm really excited to make those new connections personally.
I'll jump in just to say we currently don't have, maybe the strongest connections to the university system. It's exciting to hear, those of you who have that. And again, emulating Northeast RISC, we've been thinking really from the start of how to build more student connection, both just to help us get some things done and to help prepare that next generation of folks who are going to be tackling this issue. So that's very much a concerted part of where we'll be going with Northwest RISC. I think it's also going to be exciting just to see how we all start to figure out our niches of where we have region-specific work, which is of course by definition the focus, and then where our work truly does overlap and start to build more of that nationally based momentum too.
And I'm going to take that as an opportunity to plug the workshop that we're planning for NASMA this year. That is going to be that cross, we're still developing the details, but it is going to be that cross-risk perspective where we look where things, are priorities in each network and then how those overlap and we can help each other. I actually use the word synergize in our proposal, which I never use that word.
I'm going to make fun of you about that later. Okay, so I'll just jump in to say I'm really excited to see how the work we've put in over the last 5 years is helpful to the other risks, like our research summaries and our management challenges. A lot of it is not just Northeast specific, and also for you all to spoil us on things we could have done better. Thanks, Paula, for mentioning for students. That has been a huge part of what we do, is having students really involved in postdocs. And then I saw the question in the chat. Yes, we want risks everywhere. So if you have contacts in Alaska that want to talk about this, happy to talk about it. I'm giving a presentation to Minnesota Invasive Species Advisory Council next week as the Midwest maybe ramps up a risk, and South Central has been thinking about it. So yeah, absolutely. There's still room on the website, room in the tent, under the tent.
Yeah, and I can just answer real quick. I mean, I guess for me personally, just echoing what Dia was saying, we're also really excited to be more involved with our Pacific Island partners, not just here in Hawaii, but reaching out and helping them along, because we are seeing climate change before our eyes and the impacts of invasive species. And then also, you know, we have challenges to integrating on a national level. And I think this is such a great platform for us to be working on a national level with the other risks, and kind of following in the footsteps of the Northeast risks. And also, you know, as these other risks kind of get moving and going along, it's great to be able to meet regularly and have these symposiums where we can all come together for the shared goal. So thanks.